Hello there. Hey, what's happening? Robert Phoenix here with another edition of the Friday FARcast. Let's get this in my sound effects. I just have to, visualize them, or not really visualize them. How do you just sonify them in my own head? Thank you very much for being here with me again today. All 150 of you. Every now and then I get to around 200. I will try to make my audio, I was listening to this show the other day, and I think it was actually yesterday's show, and I realized that my audio is good, but sometimes I get too far away from the mic, and I need to be really consistent with my placement, my mic placement, as it relates to my mouth. Yeah, boy. So what's happening out there? As I attempt to modulate as consistently as possible across the vast audio spectrum of the remains of the known free world throughout the entire galaxy in all 12 dimensions of reality and the soul. What's going on? What's happening? Here in Texas, let me give you kind of a heads up. We've got Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey, right off the coast of Texas. Harvey, the invisible rabbit, that guy. Also, Harvey, who shows up in Harvey Dent, the guy who's got the Two-Face, the messed up face in Batman. Harvey Dent, or Two-Face, was this is why I'm running late today, by the way. They don't do this every Friday. But every now and then they decide that they're going to mow a lawn that's probably doesn't need a whole lot of mowing. But hey, people get employed. They have jobs. They get to take that money home. They get to feed and clothe their kids and send them off to football teams and baseball teams and dance lessons and all that good stuff. So mow away, brother. Mow that lawn. So Harvey Dent is a villain in Batman. Of course, if you've seen the final installment of Batman with Christian Bale as Batman, and actually it's the second to final installment, not the final installment, the second one, and that's with the Joker and Heath Ledger playing the Joker. It's an exceptional. All the three Batman films starring Christian Bale are exceptional. They're really exceptional. And there's a lot of very interesting sort of touch points from predictive programming. How there's a map in the Batman film where Sandy Hook shows up. It's crazy stuff. Really, 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 really crazy stuff. Yeah. So, Hurricane Harvey. Harvey the Invisible Rabbit, Harvey Dent, with the Harveys coming through in there. How about a little Lee Harvey Oswald? So we have the Harvey Trinity. Couldn't they name it something else besides Hurricane Harvey? It's triggering me. I'm being triggered by Hurricane Harvey. all these associations. The invisible rabbit going down the rabbit hole. Jimmy Stewart, who might just be a little bit insane because he has an invisible rabbit that he talks to and has a dialogue with, a spiritual advisor, and then Harvey Dent, Two-Face, the horrific villain, the tragic story of Batman, Lee Harvey Oswald, the great Patsy. Couldn't they have named it a different hurricane? I'm a little upset by this. Where's my cats? I need my cats. They'll help me weather the storm. It's not quite storming yet, although it's a little bit overcast. We got the winds. The winds are picking up. That's interesting. That is interesting. So we could get, probably about anywhere between 12 to 20 inches of rain this weekend here in Austin. Batten down the hatches. Go out and get your gas, get your batteries, get your kayak, get your blow-up raft. Keep your ammo dry. Keep your powder dry, because that could be very important. No, it's not. But I'll tell you, though, down there in Houston and Galveston, down in the coastal areas, it could be very, very intense. People are evacuating. They have been evacuating for the last couple of days. They need to get to higher ground. People are going to places like San Antonio, Austin, the Hill Country, Dallas, or wherever they can go land for a while to get away from what could be a pretty intense storm. They've already done that. Gas stations are being emptied of gas in the Houston area, and that's kind of an interesting thing if you think about it, because Houston is petroleum city. This is one of the petroleum centers of the entire world, because that's where the deals are done, number one. That's where the administration, the organization, the operations for American Petroleum are centered. And Houston is a port town, so a lot of the Houston, Galveston, Corpus, all those port towns, Port Arthur, that's where a lot of the crude comes in and gets sent out to be refined. I don't know what's happening. Last year there were just tons of barges out at sea because there was such a backlog of crude on the market, because the Saudi decided they wanted to flood the market. That was before they became friends with Trump and Rex Tillerson. I don't know what's happened to all that oil. Maybe they were able to move it and process it. I don't know what the story is. But it's a big deal. There are people that have to, here in Houston, in Texas, this is a working state. Yes, there are ranches, they have cattle, people have horses, they have crops. So when a storm comes in, they've got to be able to get it together and work and make sure a lot of the stuff gets picked or processed or moved to higher ground or safer, drier environments. So it's it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And we should start to see some of that tonight, really Saturday. It could be much more intense. But with these storms, we never know. We saw what happened with Katrina, which was, man, I remember when Katrina happened. Let me just let. It's one of those events that unless you're with the right people, you can feel really alone. Katrina had that 9/11 type feeling to it. If you were turned on and switched on and you knew about HARP and you knew about weather control and you heard the early reports about gunfire down by the levees and explosions and all the other stuff that was happening, and then as everything began to escalate, you saw the writing on the wall. We saw what was going on, and it was terrible. It was absolutely terrible. You had people, first responders from places as far away as Michigan, Massachusetts, Missouri. People were pouring down to New Orleans to help the people. Fire trucks. There were fire trucks that had come down from places like Massachusetts. These were first responders. You had your average kind of American who, in a crisis, your average American in a crisis is a hero, by the way. This is one of the things that I hate about the demonization of America in certain groups and certain genders of America, because in those times of crisis, we can be absolutely and utterly selfless and heroic, and that's the way it is. It was kind of born into. We're born into it. It's part of it's part of this Cancerian adaptation that, as an agreement, as a group agreement, because the United States was consecrated astrologically under the sign of Cancer, using Western Placidus mundane astrology. Remember that. If they're using sidereal astrology, the United States is Gemini, right? We're going to get into sidereal astrology. We're going to get into constellations versus signs today, because we're going to be talking about September 23rd, a day that a lot of people are starting to pay attention to now that we've gone through the eclipse. Now we've got another apocalyptic date ahead of us. So get ready for that one. In all fairness, there was some intense activity around the eclipse, and we are not the same country. I'm sorry, we're not. We're not the same country post-eclipse. There's a beginning and an end. There is a beginning and an end with this eclipse. Before the eclipse, and remember, we talk about a week and a half before to a week and a half after, roughly. We're at 14 to about 20 days. And I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I'll sound like a broken record. We had the Charlottesville event in the shadow of the eclipse. That event has changed the United States. It has changed the United States, who knows for how long. Certainly in the short term, there are radical things happening. And we've been tracking these radical things as they've been unfolding before our very eyes. And we're scratching our heads again. There's a revolution going on here. There's a coup taking place, both of which we talked about before, and both of which have happened. And the amazing thing about Trump, he pardoned Joe Arpaio, and I'm glad he did. It's about every now and then, Trump will do something, and he'll remind you as to why he's Trump. You know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, he pardoned Joe Arpaio. Of course he should. The guy was just doing his job. He was just doing what was being told to him. Now, look, I am not a huge supporter of Joe Arpaio, although I support the fact that the guy is a constitutionalist. He's one of these lone voices out there who tend to want to, stick by the letter of the law, live by the letter of the law. Some of his sentencing was very creative, let's put it that way. But I often felt that he was really kind of a grandstander. He loved the attention. He loved being, that guy, Judge Joe Arpaio. He loved being the guy that was really hard and created these camps where these people had to, stay in tents. Like, it was like, okay, you're going to do time. It's not going to be comfortable time. I don't really have a problem with that either. But he seemed to delight in it. There was almost a slightly fascistic edge to him. But, he was doing his gig. He was doing his job. And all of a sudden, Obama comes in. You have the Obama judges, and they want to persecute him. They want to punish him, and they want to send him to jail because he was just doing his thing. And Trump came in, and he pardoned him. Good. Trump should pardon a few more other people along the way, by the way. He should probably pardon Julian Assange. But that would be too obvious now, wouldn't it? Especially if Julian Assange is still around. He should be pardoned, though. Even though, has Julian Assange ever committed an offense here? I'm not sure he's I don't think he has committed an offense. Now that I think about it, the only thing that Julian Assange has been guilty of is supposedly molesting, raping 2 grown women who were probably a plant to honey trap to set him up. And that's about it. I don't think Julian Assange is a serial rapist. If he's still around anyway, he could be just a mere cutout now. But and maybe not even now. But there's nothing that he did that was wrong. He didn't commit any crimes. Edward Snowden, that's a different case altogether. Edward Snowden, technically speaking, did commit crimes. Would Trump pardon Snowden? Absolutely not. That's never going to happen. Never. That ain't happening. trying to fix my mic here a little bit because I may want to sit down. You know, one of my things now is I stand up all the time. Like when I do a reading for somebody, I stand up. I've done a 2-hour reading standing up. And the reason why is because I've figured out that just sitting down is the worst thing you can do. It is the absolute worst. And I've been sitting down for 10 years, helping people, working with people, talking with people, doing the show, all that stuff. Now I think I've got to stand up for another 10 years so I can reverse the trend. And they're my friends. Capitalism's good! Mow that lawn! Maybe I should do this show one day. Maybe I'll do a 15 minutes of flame hanging upside down on my inversion table. That would be interesting, wouldn't it? Wouldn't that be kind of... I think I could get into the Guinness Book of Records with something like that. I'll look into that. The longest radio show hanging upside down. Maybe I could get some press here in Austin. Get on the map here. Get on the radar here. The Hanged Man Special. So we're in a new America. It's pretty clear now. Because one of the things that if you're in corporate America and you have a product launch or you have a marketing plan, or you have a corporate policy, or you've got some kind of stratagem, one of the things that you are invested in as a corporation is you want to make sure all of your talking points are consistent across as many platforms as possible. Correct? So if you're doing social media, you've got the talking points, you've got the selling points, you've got the marketing switches, and they're all lined up and they're all consistent across all the platforms. When somebody does an interview, it's the same thing. It's consistent and basically supporting those platforms. And the interview can be radio, print, whatever, correct? If it's a press release, it's the same thing. You know, what are you telling your employees? That if you're moving in a particular direction or you're launching a new product, that this is how we're communicating. So from top to bottom, a corporation is unified in its talking points, in its stratagems, and in its various channels that it's all being funneled through. So if we look at what's taking place now, and let's say the United States is a corporation, because it is, the talking points are all unified across a number of platforms. And so when this happens, you can tell. You know that we are in the process of a major paradigmatic shift, and not necessarily a very good one, in my estimation. One of the things that happened on the backside of Charlottesville is that Trump's CEOs, his advisory committee, they left. They walked out of Trump land. And then what we've seen across the board, whether it's Uber or Airbnb or more mainline, more mainstream corporations, is this denouncement of racism and white nationalism and everything that was connected to the America First, Make America Great Again, the nationalist movement, bringing our resources back home, maybe bringing our troops back home, and maybe rebuilding our cities, and not the same way that the UN wants to rebuild our cities. You know, there's the Strong Cities Initiative. Well, we could do something else. The Stronger Cities Initiative. these are all the things that, we've been sold out to the globalists, we've been sold out to the corporations, we've been sold out to the banks, we've been sold out to foreign interests. And the foreign interests that aren't often talked about, really, if we wanted to make a super dent in our economy, and save some money, first thing you do, just across the board, well, you cut out aid to Saudi Arabia, and then you cut out aid to Israel. That's a lot of money. And you see, by doing that, you're not playing favors, right? You're not saying, hey, look, we're gonna cut out aid to Israel, but we're gonna keep giving Saudi Arabia aid. Well, you're anti-Semitic, you're anti-Israel, Or you're not gonna say, hey, we're gonna continue to give Israel aid, but we're gonna cut out aid to Saudi Arabia. Oh, look at you, you're Islamophobic. Now you just go across the board and cut them both out. And all of a sudden there's a lot of extra money. But here's the deal with that extra money. You got to make sure it's redirected back into the economy. You can't take the extra money and build an underground base or 2 or 3 or 4. Right? You can't do that. That's not why we're doing it. We have trillions of dollars that go missing each year from all these various agencies. The Pentagon is a great one. Oh, gee, we lost $1 trillion. Sorry, we don't know where it went. We just don't know where it went. I know where it went. Went into the black budget. Went into the underground base program. High energy weapons, paying people off. That's where that money went. That's exactly where it went. Black budgets for a shadow government. So if we got the money back, they say, hey, Saudi Arabia, sorry, the arms deal is good, you pay us, but we're gonna cut the aid off. Israel, sorry, hey, brothers, we're gonna cut that aid off. And man, could you imagine the outrage to that? Boy. But that would be a unilateral thing. You're not playing favorites. You're not playing favorites at all. Just bring that money home. And then we could begin to rebuild some of these things. We can rebuild our infrastructure, which Trump has not been able to. Again, I am not here to bang a drum for Trump. That's not what I'm here to do. But I guarantee you, if Hillary was president and she said, well, we want to do infrastructure, they'd say, how fast? How fast, Madam President, can we do this? Oh my God. She's a visionary. She's a genius. She's the next FDR. She's the female FDR. She's the HRC. But Trump can't get a damn thing done. Although apparently now Paul Ryan, is starting to backtrack, saying, well, maybe we should build this wall. He's getting so much heat. So much freaking heat. You see, the people are not dumb. And Trump's... Look, here's what's going to happen. The extortion racket and the bullying that's coming from the social Marxists and George Soros and his thugs, and whomever is engineering this stuff along with him, because Soros is really a front man for the Rothschilds. I mean, let's be clear about that. He does not operate independently of the Rothschilds. If you do business on this planet and you start to change countries and do regime change, you got to go to the da capo, right? And who's the da capo of the planet? It's that family. Now, there are other very powerful families. There's the black nobility of Italy, whom you never hear about, but they're extremely powerful. There's other families that are connected to the Rothschilds, like the Goldschmidts and more. You don't really hear about them. There's the Warburgs. There's the Baruchs. There's a lot of different families, but at the top of the heap, you're the keepers of the temple and the pyramid. That's the Rothschild family. So if you're George Soros, you can't go into a country and do regime change unless you are, kissing the ring of the Godfather. So let's be clear about that. When we talk about Soros, and Soros is such an interesting character because he becomes a straw man. Correct? Are we talking? So when we get into all this stuff, when we dig in, it's like, it's Soros, it's Soros, it's Soros, it's Soros. Hang him, shoot him. Who are we not talking about? We're not talking about the Rothschilds, I guarantee you that. We're not talking about the Rockefellers, I can guarantee you that. George Soros, and I believe a lot of the things that he's doing and has done are, the color revolutions. I mean, his fingerprints are all over this stuff. All of the nonprofits that are tied to his name, all the groups that he funds, all the color revolutions, it's Soros, 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 Soros. That stuff is true. That stuff is real. It's valid. But I'm telling you, he's, in as much as he has become the devil incarnate, he is a gatekeeper. And he's a front man. And he's doing a great job because he takes the heat off of these other families, particularly the Rothschilds. You ever notice that Alex Jones never talks about the Rothschilds? He never talks about the Rothschilds. Never. And Alex Jones is great. I watch him. I think he's great. I think he's brilliant. I think he's smart. He's really good at just kind of improvising stuff. But there's a lot that Alex Jones leaves off the table. Now, one could say, well, that's smart, because if you talk about it, you'll get shut down. Well, he's about to get shut down anyway, or at least that's what they'd like us to believe. So if you're going to go there, go there. Because at some point, he's crossing some lines, man, with the stuff in Charlottesville, the KKK. I mean, basically, you're saying the guys took their hoods off. They had hook noses, which automatically qualify them as being Jewish. And that was a big thing for Alex Jones to say. And he caught a lot of heat for it. And he had to back it up, and he had to say that there are, when they bust somebody for vandalizing, a cemetery, Jewish cemetery, or vandalizing a synagogue, and people have been caught, in most cases, they've been Jewish. And you can look it up. And Alex talked about it, and he knows he can say this. He knows he's not playing another Pizzagate because it's in the news. There's enough validity to back it up. So, they tried to, but a good friend of mine, Robert Bonomo, who listens to the show, calls it the third rail. Alex got onto the third rail, let me tell you. Alex had his big toe sparking. He probably has a long toenail, and his long toenail was sparking the third rail on that one. It's interesting. But this is who Soros is. Soros is a bagman. He's a bagman. He's a boogeyman. Of course he is. And of course he's the front man for what's taking place. But I'm telling you right now, he has to answer to the da capo. And the da capo is Evelyn de Rothschild. That's correct. Absolutely correct. What's interesting, of course, and this is what the Rothschilds do, and they've been doing this for centuries. They fund both sides of the war. They were funding Napoleon and England. And whoever wins the war, well, guess what? They're beholden to the Rothschilds. They don't care. They don't care who wins a war. Just like in this election cycle, Linda Rothschild was very close with Hillary Clinton. Very, very close to Hillary Clinton. Right? And they were funding Hillary Clinton's campaign. They were giving her money. But they were also funding Donald Trump's campaign. You can bet your ass on it. So they didn't care who won. And ultimately, at the end of the day, whoever wins is beholden to whoever puts them in power. And that's just the way it is. But you won't hear about it. You'll hear about George Soros, the boogeyman. He's just a bagman. He's a front. He's an absolute front. He's got to kiss the ring. That's the name of the story. It's a very old story. So I'll give you a weather update. The wind has died down, and it is a little bit sunnier. It's not as gray and overcast. I'm ready for the storm, sort of. I'll go out and I'll get some batteries. Play the storm game. I'll get some batteries for my battery-powered radios. I'll get some batteries. I have plenty of water. I'll get some batteries for my flashlights. I'll get some candles just in case the power goes out. I'll get some nuts and fruit. I'll go to Costco and get one of my favorite nut and fruit mixes. Costco has the best, man. They've got this one that has all the stuff that I like. You know what I don't like? I don't like I don't like those mixes where they have the yogurt version of the chocolate chip. I don't like that. I don't. And I'm not crazy about having the dried papaya in there either. It changes everything. You know, you get the dried papaya, and now you're having like a tropical kind of fruit. And give me the dried cherry, the almond, the cashew. Give me the pumpkin seed, and maybe some dried cranberry, dried blueberry. That's it. Boom. That's it. I'm happy with that. All right, so we're going to talk about September 23rd, which is a date coming up here in the not-so-distant future. It is the next destination for disaster, depression, and the ultimate demise of the planet. And this, of course, has biblical connotations. So essentially, what's happening here is, you need to understand this from the perspective of, this is from Revelation 12, 1-2. Here we go. This is the line from Revelation. And a great sign appeared in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. So what's happening on the 23rd of September? And again, this is from a constellation standpoint. This is not from an astrological standpoint, because the constellations are different than the signs. If you are rolling with constellations, you are rolling with a sidereal representation of astrology, which very few people do, unless, of course, you're the elites. And I do believe that the elites run with sidereal at times. Maybe all the time. Maybe when it suits them. And this would be the disjunction between the world that we're living in and the world that they're living in. Perhaps a representation of the Matrix in some ways. But I've been working with Western Placidus mundane astrology, and it has been, at the very least, a very powerful and predictive map for the world that we're living in. But let's get into this anyway. So on the 23rd of September, now remember, this is sidereal astrology. So the sun, according to the constellations, is still in the sign of Virgo. Although with Placidus astrology, the sun is in the sign of Libra. Jupiter, the moon, and they bring in Spica here, because Spica is in Virgo. It's a fixed star, and it's been in Virgo for a long time. So this comprises, in the constellation of Virgo, the pregnant woman, or the woman pregnant with child. Now, this is really interesting. This is to me, this is fascinating, because on the one hand, we have the Christian community, particularly the born-again Christian community, completely denouncing and decrying astrology. And yet, when it comes to it fitting into their vision of the end times and Revelations, boy, they're more than willing to accept it. Because Jupiter will be in the sign of Virgo for 9 months, hence the giving birth. That's the giving. That is their sign. Because again, we're dealing with sidereal astrology or constellation-based astrology. Now Jupiter, at that point in time, in September, is going to be in Libra, and will continue to be in Libra until October, when in Western Placidus mundane it goes into Scorpio. So we have two different representations. But again, I think it's really fascinating that, okay, we'll take the astrological, even if it's sidereal, interpretation because it fits into our version of end times. Other than that, we won't touch astrology. Is that interesting? And I'm not here to denounce God. I'm not here to denounce Christianity. But I'm here to point out that that's kind of an inconsistency. It's like we'll dip our, we'll soil ourselves because this actually is able to, bring this vision of revelation closer at hand. And it might be, okay? I am not God, but I'm just here to point out the inconsistency. That's all. That's all. And for you to understand this. So now we're talking about the crown of 12 stars. Okay, so what do we have? 9 stars plus 3 planets in Leo. So it's the constellation Leo, which is always on top of Virgo. So we have Mercury in Leo. And at that time, Mercury will not be in Leo. Mercury will be, I believe, in Virgo because we have Mercury retrograde. Mars is in their world in Leo. No, at that time, Mars will be in Virgo. Venus will be in Leo. Now, Venus won't be in Leo either. It'll be in Virgo. So if anything, we're going to have all of these Virgo planets down below and, Regulus and 1, 2, 3, 8 other stars. 8 other stars. But because they're running with the constellation model, all of a sudden it becomes... And by the way, here's the other thing too, right? And I don't talk about Flat Earth much. And there's some compelling stuff to Flat Earth. And then there's some other stuff with Flat Earth that I don't think makes any sense at all. Like one of the main tenets of Flat Earth is that gravity doesn't exist because we're basically moving upwards all the time. And that's I can't wrap my head around that. But a lot of Christians are Flat Earthers. So if they're Flat Earthers, then the representation of the planets and the various stars is bullshit. It's bullshit. It's just what they call the firmament. And nothing wheels through any sign. Okay? So there's some inconsistency in the model. Now, what I'm concerned about, to some degree, and this is what happens, is that because there is this... And this is where the Christians will say, well, I'll say that there are people that are willing to take advantage of this moment in time and push an agenda because they know on some level they get a bunch of people around the planet looking for this. So they go, okay, we'll give it to them. We'll create something that kind of bends to their vision, and then we can control them even further. But then the Christian who is invested in this model will say it doesn't matter because they're doing God's will. You see. Anyway, this is the date that we're looking at here. It's the September 23rd date. And a great sign appeared in heaven: a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. She was pregnant and was crying out in birth pains and the agony of giving birth. All right, we'll get into this. You go to Wikipedia. Here's what Wikipedia has to say about the 23rd of September. The Revelation 12 sign is an apocalyptic belief heralding that the time of Jacob's trouble, also known as the tribulation period, may begin on 23rd September 2017. This theory, which has been promoted by a number of people and news organizations, proposes that a literal fulfillment of prophecy made in the Book of Revelation 12:1-2 will occur on this date over Jerusalem. This passage of Scripture in the New Testament describes a woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and a crown of 12 stars on her head. She was pregnant and cried out in pain as she was about to give birth. Many people worldwide believe that an astronomical alignment involving these constellations, Virgo and Leo, the sun, the moon, planets, Mercury, Mars, Venus, and Jupiter, occurring in September 2017, will fulfill this prophecy word for word. Overview: there is no ambiguity in regards to when this alignment was first discovered. That was on April 7th, 2011. William Tapley's channel, Third Eagle Books, published a video entitled Stellarium, giving the 2017 date of the sign and explaining how the planetary alignment that year matched text with Revelation 12 better than the 2011 alignments, which he said 3 earlier videos from other people had mentioned. A few months later, on July 30th, 2011, Scott Clark from ERF Ministries posted a YouTube video describing the alignment, which some people worldwide have now become to believe is the Revelation 12 sign. In 2012, Unsealed World News suggested that the purported sign might be connected to the rapture of the church, though they have repeatedly stated the exact date of the rapture is unknown. It might happen sometime before or after September 23rd. Although Scotty Clark popularized the Revelation 12 sign, Luis Lu Vega would have written about the alignment in 2008 on his website. The Apocalypse of John describes a woman clothed in the sun with the moon under her feet and a crown and 12 stars. We've been there. The second verse of the 12th chapter of John's Apocalypse goes on to say that the woman was pregnant and cried out in pain. And Jupiter exists in the lower part of the womb 42 weeks later, which is the approximate length of a human gestation period. So that means that Jupiter goes into Libra, into the astronomical sign of Libra, the astrological constellational sign. It is also discovered that the apparent retrograde of Jupiter in the womb of Virgo was preceded by C-2017 E1 comet Borisov, which is being called the Conception Comet. This comet traveled from the loins of the constellation Leo to the womb of the constellation Virgo. Now, we've had some really interesting relationships with Leo and Virgo. We talked about this with the eclipse. This is a very fascinating time between these two constellations and these two signs. I'll grant that, okay? Some interesting stuff going on. Some proponents of the Revelation 12 sign are suggesting that this comet represented the divine insemination of the woman, which subsequently produced the male child Jupiter. Boy, this is really pagan stuff. This is really fascinating. Really, really, really fascinating. You know, this is the stuff of like pagan mythology. And I'm not an atheist. I believe in God. I believe that Jesus, aka Sananda, Yeshua Emmanuel, walked this earth, right? That person existed. I am not an astrotheologist. That person existed. And I'm sorry to other people of other faiths, other persuasions, that dude was different than anybody else. I love me some Buddha. Buddha was amazing. I love Confucius. Confucius is amazing. Right? Lao Tzu, love Lao Tzu. Amazing. Rumi, amazing. None of them are that guy. Sorry. They add to the tapestry of wisdom and the richness of consciousness. Not that guy, though. But this is really kind of this is like pagan stuff. It's fascinating. Let me read on here. Some proponents of the Revelation 12 sign are suggesting that this comet represented the divine insemination of the woman, which subsequently produced the male child Jupiter. Boy, this is right out of Greek mythology. This will be the comet's only trip through our solar system, as it is not a solar orbital. Okay, again, flat Earth people on the Christian side, defend that one. The Revelation 12 sign may coincide with the high holy day of Rosh Hashanah, on the Jewish calendar, which is called the Feast of Trumpets, or Trumpens. How about that? The Feast of Trumpets is the first of the fall feasts, and its timing is traditionally based on the visibility of the new moon, which in 2017 is expected to either begin on the evening of September 21st and end on the evening of the 22nd if the 2% illuminated moon is sighted, or begins on the evening of the 22nd and the end of the evening of the 23rd when the sign is fulfilled. Rosh Hashanah is the Jewish New Year celebration, in this case marking the end of year 5777, 777 of course being, right, the number of years, months, and days that Donald Trump was the day that he took oath on, January 20th, correct? Yeah, that's right. CU 777. And the beginning of 5778, the Feast of Trumpets in the Jewish tradition, is believed to be the day when the dead will be resurrected and judgment will begin. While Christians believe the period describes the tribulation period found in the Book of Revelation. So we have the resurrection of the dead and the beginning of the tribulations, the trials of the tribulations of Revelations If I were a Christian, can I just tell you what I would do? I'd just create a Bible based on the New Testament. That's all I'd do. I would drop the Old Testament. Isn't that blasphemy? I just go straight to the New Testament. Just like get into that life, get into that teaching. You know, get away from all the smoting and the jealous God and all the other, heavy duty stuff that goes along with the Old Testament, also known as the Torah, also known as whatchamacallit, oh my God, it's Utnapishtim, and the Sumerians, the Epic of Gilgamesh. You've got a number of the same stories that show up in the Old Testament or in the Epic of Gilgamesh. I mean, so these were territorial stories of a certain and particular time that were shared between various Fertile Crescent cultures in the Levant. Just get to the New Testament. The complete astronomical alignment occurs on September 23rd over Jerusalem. Shown below are the key 8 elements. So you can find this on Wikipedia. I'm just reading the Wikipedia stuff. Let's get into media attention and critics. The Revelation 12 sign has received widespread media attention from the Washington Post, Boston Globe, LifeSite News, Shoebar, Prophetic.com, the Catholic Astronomer, among others. A number of critics have offered rebuttals of the purported sign, arguing that the sign is not unique or is only astrology. And there we go. Is that a sign? Could be. Could be. Critics include Answers in Genesis, as author Danny Faulkner, Christian author Joel Richardson, Jan Markell from Olive Tree Ministries, Christian Bible Prophecy author Craig C. White, Christian blogger and author Tim McKay, and several others. So, Dr. Faulkner mentions several specific points of contention, including Jupiter appears in the part of Virgo corresponding to her womb, along with the sun in Virgo and the moon at her feet for a day or two every 12 weeks or so. Since the claim that Leo has 9 stars is false, the assertion that the addition of the 3 planets brings the total number of stars in Leo to 12 is false too, particularly because Regulus has moved into Virgo. These sorts of claims amount to Rorschach tests. People tend to see in them what they want to see. This year, with the huge popularity of YouTube, it is much easier to propagate these ideas. So this is interesting. Okay. So Tim McKay mentioned several flaws in the Revelation 12 theory. Scholars have found that the sky on September 11th, 3 BC, showed to be the exact picture of Revelation, pointing to the birth of Christ on that day. Who has been talking about this for the last 5 years, right? I did a show on Gaia about September 11th. September 11th. Being that year, right? 3 BC. As being the birth of Christ on that day. That's it. Thank you, Tim McKay. Clarke's theory, like all invented prophecy theories, depends on taking a verse out of its context. Yada, yada, yada. Okay. What else do we have here? Let me just see. Anything of... here we go. The position of the sun does not match Revelation 12:1, which says the sun clothes the woman. The sun is over her left shoulder. For the sun to clothe the woman, it would be on her body, not at her head like the crown. He's right. That means it crowns the woman, not at her feet like the moon. In the middle where her body is where the clothing goes. If you want to see what it should look like, compare that to the picture of the sky on 11 September 3 BC, when I and many think, yep, right here, yours included, Jesus was born. There you go. Okay? So for all of you people out there who are freaking out about September 23rd, that it's the next day, remember, now I'm not saying that nothing will happen over the course of the following 9 months. I mean, there can be agents that fulfill these kind of weird visions of prophecies because they want people on the other end of it to believe that something is really happening. And of course they'll say, well, the Lord works in mysterious ways. This is, you know what I'm saying? I mean, so it's a win-win either way. It's a win-win either way. But remember, we went through a period where we had blood moons. Remember the blood moons? John Hagee, right? Remember the blood moons? The full, we had 4. Was it 4 or 5? I think it was 5 total eclipses all in a row. Like some years don't get a total eclipse of the moon, right? Sometimes they get the annual or the penumbral. I mean, so we had 5 in a row, and boy, that was something. He had a New York Times bestseller out of that blood moon book, and of course that final blood moon, happening on the Jubilee and all this other stuff going on. Which was also the time then that CERN was getting switched on. It was right around that September 23rd time, right? That was the final of the blood moons. And I remember all these people were like, doom and gloom, prophecy, blah, 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 blah. And, as an astrologer and somebody who's got some skin in this game, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, you know what? I'm not feeling this. I am not feeling this. I am not feeling this kind of end time surge into some other reality. Now, some people might say, well, that was the beginning of the Mandela effect. And it's a whole other discussion. But I am glad I did not fall prey to the blood moon madness. We're still here. We're still here. Is it a weirder world? Of course it is. Will it get weirder? Of course it will. Are people going to disappear all of a sudden out of the blue? Who knows? They might. They might. But the rapture was added to the Bible, and it much later on, right? And it's not even the King James Bible. It's a completely different Bible. So take a deep breath. Deep breath, do your research, get into it, try to understand some things, come to your own conclusion. But I will say this, that if we are coming to a time where there is a tribulation, and I believe there will be, I really do, because this planetary domain, this holographic rollout of creation cannot exist in this state moving forward forever. It can't, it won't, because we are clearly descending into a period of chaos, disruption, destruction, and madness. It's really very, very obvious to myself and watching what other people are going through. And think of a fire in a forest. At some point, that fire gets extinguished. Whether it's because a huge storm comes in and douses the fire, or reaches the periphery of the forest where there's nothing left to burn, it goes out. Everything has an end to it. Everything. We will not be enslaved and enchained into infinity. It's not going to happen. I'm here to tell you that. It's not going to happen. Even if it's 7 years or 70 years or 700 years, it comes to an end at some point. All things come to an end. The best teams in baseball and football, eventually they fall. Empires fall. Governments fall. Fortunes fall. It's entropy. It's what happens with the world. It's what happens with the universe. You get a family like the Rothschilds who think they've beaten entropy because they've amassed so much wealth. Even at some point in time, that will fall. Trust me. It'll be worth nothing. Absolute zero. So, in the event that we, do enter into a space where there is a reckoning, you really need to be okay with who you are. You need to be okay with your soul. And I have a number of people that email me, and a lot of them like to share their spiritual experience with me. Most of which I agree with, some of which I don't. But that's okay. Not everybody agrees with me, and that's fine. If we agree mostly, then guess what? We've got an opportunity to have a dialogue. We can talk, we can share, we can exchange ideas. And maybe there are things that we can inform each other, and we can see things through different lenses. And that's what it's about. But I will tell you that it's probably pretty good to get right with your soul, get right with God. And that's not the easiest thing to do. I mean, if you've got a backlog of stuff in your life that you need to somehow address, people that you need to talk to, conversations, deep conversations that you need to have with your soul, your higher self, Sananda, God, whatever dialogue you want to, however you want to, parse that. It's a pretty good idea to start having those dialogues. Just in case, right? Tether your camel first, and then trust in God. The tethering of the camel is being right with your spirit, being right with your soul. And there are people right now who are needing to do so much healing. So much healing. I'm an astrologer. I work with people. I see the struggles and the travails that people go through. And I work with these people. And the best thing that we can do is, come to some level of acceptance, some level of understanding, what our highest mission on this planet is, gifts, skills, abilities, and the challenges and the struggles that we need to look at, deal with, compensate for, heal, whatever they are. So this is that time, and there are a lot of people going through this. I'm going through a phase where I'm spending way more time alone than I ever have. And this is not easy. When I was living in California, I was like really social. I was always going to concerts. When I was in the music business, I could go to any show. And I had friends who were musicians, friends that were artists, and we're always doing interesting things, right? There was always something to do, some place to go, some event, some game. And since I've been in Austin, it's been a major paradigm shift. And I spend most of my time alone now, more so than ever. And it's a pretty trippy place to be honest with you. And I'm an only child, so I'm kind of used to it, right? I'm kind of used to that place, in that phase. But, at 56 years old, you think to yourself, well, is this the way it's going to be for the rest of my life? And I don't want to really get into my personal life too much, in my emotional life, because it's private. I like to do separation of church and state. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. There are certain things I'll share, things about my kid, but there are other areas of my life where I've always had kind of that Maginot line. Sometimes things seep over and into it, and sometimes they don't. But I've been spending a lot more time alone, and it's been a really sobering experience in a lot of ways. And especially, changing my diet and doing all these things. I've talked about the condition of my lower back, and I got to tell you, I've given up on certain staples in the diet, and it's been an amazing experience. I love Mexican food. It's one of my favorite foods. Guess what? I don't eat it anymore. I've given it up. Yes, can I have a salad with jicama and cotija cheese and maybe some grilled chicken? Yeah, that's on the menu, but I can't do corn chips. Even, non-GMO organic corn chips, I can't do the corn chip. The corn chip has lectins in it. And maybe somebody out there who's a super nutritionist can tell me, don't worry about the corn chip. It doesn't have lectins. The lectins have been delectified when it's been cooked in hydrogenated soybean oil. But it's gone. The beans are gone. I love refried beans, refried black beans, pinto beans. One of my favorite things. Love them. Gone. Peas are gone. Gone. Corn. I don't eat corn anyway, but every now and then I get a bag of organic, really good. By the way, you cannot find organic corn in the store anymore. You can't find it. It is not available. And I'm talking Whole Foods. I'm talking Central Market here in Texas. You cannot find. You might be able to find it at a place like Wheatsville, which is a co-op, and sometimes people sell their local produce. And you might be able to get an ear or two of organic corn, but you can't find organic corn anymore unless it's frozen. And I love corn. It was one of my favorite dishes as a kid was creamed corn over my mashed potatoes. Talk about comfort. Anyway, but that's gone too. No more corn. Went gluten-free. No more gluten-free substitute. Gone. If it's a grain, gone. Done. Rice, gone. My son came over the other night, cooked him dinner. I had these purple potatoes. I cooked the purple potatoes. We had those. But purple potato is not going to be a staple in my diet. I just wanted something for my son other than spinach leaves, which I've been eating a lot of. Anyway, you get the picture. As a result of this, my body is really changing. The back is really starting to get a lot better. Is it perfect? No, I still have some discomfort, but it's not the way it was. And it doesn't take long. So if some of you out there are really struggling with your health, if you're really struggling with inflammation, if you're really struggling with your guts, all I have to say is change your diet. Change your diet. It's not easy. If you can eat one meal a day, which I really try to do. I'm not that good at it. I'm a big guy. I'm 6'3", and 220 pounds. So I try to eat my big meal in the morning, usually consisting of eggs and some goat cheese and maybe some avocado, some wild-caught salmon, freshwater salmon from the Atlantic side of the world, Icelandic, that area, right? And then I'll have a kind of a power smoothie without any berries, without anything. I've got my powders and my coconut milk, and boom, that's my smoothie. And at night, I've been trying to do this kind of miso soup thing with, vegetables, carrot, and spinach. So it's not really the one meal a day, but it really you start at the top of the mountain, you just taper it off on the way down. And after a while, you get used to it. You're hungry less and less and less, and the results have been tremendous. So if you're struggling out there, first thing first, you got to change the diet. Just change your diet. And there's a lot of really interesting diets out there, but this is the one that I've kind of gone to. It's a variation of this guy Guntner, his diet, and it's just eliminating a lot of the things that cause us inflammation, including the nightshades. This is the diet Tom Brady is on, by the way. Tom Brady is doing the Guntner diet. Now he'll have his own system and everything, right? The TB12 system, but it's the Guntner diet. And Tom Brady is kind of on the edge of ketosis all the time. So he's not in ketosis, but he's right at that ketonic edge where he's burning, and he's lean and mean, and he's doing yoga. And Tom Brady is switched on. Maybe he's, who knows, maybe he's a fucking robot. I don't know. Maybe he's a Nazi super soldier project. But the guy is switched on. He could be playing football for the next 5 years, theoretically, if we have football. And I'm not sure we'll have football in 5 years. Half the NFL will be kneeling on the sidelines pretty soon. And who gives a shit, right? I mean, who cares? I mean, last year it was interesting to the degree that Kaepernick did what he did. Especially in the light of a very supercharged presidential election. Obama was still in power. It was the liminal phase of the transition of power, and Kaepernick took a stand. Or he didn't. He really took a knee. And we hadn't seen that in professional sports for a very long time. It was not without precedent. There was a guy by the name of Mahmoud Abdul Rauf, formerly known as Chris Jackson, who played for the Denver Nuggets. And as a Muslim, he felt as though he could not abide by the national anthem. And he wouldn't stand for it. He wouldn't stand for it. Look, I don't have a problem with Kaepernick taking a knee. I don't have a problem with it. You know, I thought some of his reasoning was like ridiculous. You know, it was really ridiculous. But I don't have a problem with him taking a knee. That's his choice. But you have to remember, America is a business. I mean, what if I went out here and just started, hey, this is my First Amendment right. And then I just took a machine gun, you know, to all these various interests and people. You do what I'm doing, do what I'm doing. How much longer do you think I would have a platform, number one? Not that I want to do it. I've got no interest in it. But let's say I did do it. My platform would evaporate quickly. I'd have maybe 10 people listening to me. I don't water down my message so I can get 160 people to listen to me. You know, bring it as straight as I can. But I guarantee if I did that, boy, all of a sudden, oh, outrage. Man, it would be great. I get my PayPal account canceled. You see, there are ramifications for this stuff in our country. Speech is free, but there's a big price to pay for it. If you're willing to walk that razor's edge for free speech, then you better be willing to deal with the consequences. The fact of the matter is that Colin Kaepernick turned a lot of people off. Turned a lot of people off. You know what turned the people off? It wasn't his protest about how things weren't right. You know? It was things like wearing socks that depicted the killing of pigs. Kill the pigs. He was wearing kill the pig socks. You know, that's bad management. That is just bad management. So now there's this major push to get Colin Kaepernick back in the league. They had a big march. On the NFL headquarters. Spike Lee was there. All these people were there speaking out. You know, they think Colin Kaepernick is being blackballed. When are they going to remove blackballed as a word? Isn't that sort of a connotation of racism? But then again, if you say, well, let's see, maybe we can call it whiteballed. It doesn't sound too good either, does it? He's being whiteballed! Oh my God. You can't use that. So what's worse, blackball or whiteball? I'm not sure. Maybe just take the color out altogether. He's being bald! Well, that's a little tricky, isn't it? You're being bald. He's being bald. Maybe in a metaphoric sense. But here's the deal. He pissed a lot of people off. And there are 30 NFL franchises, and they got tickets to sell. They have tickets to sell. And they don't want to piss off their fan base. You know, Steve Bisciotti, who runs the Baltimore Ravens, a team that has been very fair towards people who have had past transgressions. I cite one Ray Lewis, who more or less was convicted of murder, at least a conspiracy to convict murder, who will wind up one of these days in the Hall of Fame. You know, Ray Lewis is one of these guys who was a bad guy, came from a bad situation, bad neighborhood. You know, I think Ray Lewis kind of transcended it ultimately, you know, but there was a time where Ray was up to his eyeballs in some, you know, rotten associates. And it was right after the Ravens' victory against the New York Giants in the Super Bowl of 2001, where there was a murder committed by a couple of Ray's friends. They were out late one night. I believe it was in New Orleans right after the Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. And some guys that got into a scuffle with Ray and his boys. And Ray's boys killed these two dudes. And Ray Lewis did not do any crime. He was not convicted of a criminal act, but he was convicted of a civil act. It was like the O.J. thing. So Ray Lewis had to pay money to the survivors of these two victims. And he found a career with the Baltimore Ravens. And people would always talk about Ray Lewis, Murder, murder, murder. He played football. Michael Vick did his time, did his bid. He wasn't a Baltimore Raven, but he played with the Philadelphia Eagles and a number of other teams after he wound up coming back from being in prison. He did his time, though, So the NFL, and America is forgiving. I'm not sure they ever forgave Ray Lewis. Ray managed to what was really, Ray Lewis had great timing. Social media was not the beast that it is now. If that had happened now, and Ray Lewis went through that whole thing again, boy, I tell you, Ray Lewis's career would be over. It's all about timing. Timing. But these teams, now Biscotti from the Ravens reached out to his fan base and said, hey, how do you feel about, us signing Colin Kaepernick? The response was sufficiently negative that they didn't go out and sign him. And the coach of the Ravens is John Harbaugh. And his brother Jim Harbaugh coached Colin Kaepernick when Colin Kaepernick was at the top of his game, albeit in a system that favored his physical skill set. So if anybody had any insight or any real intel into Colin Kaepernick, it would be John Harbaugh, because his brother coached him. Pick up the phone and get the skinny, right? Well, Steve Biscotti figured out that it wasn't worth it, that signing Colin Kaepernick would alienate his fan base. And the reason why, here's the deal. I'm not getting into some sports here, so please forgive me. I've already been there. Colin Kaepernick is not a great quarterback. He is not a great quarterback. He is a quarterback with a limited skill set. Can he run like the wind? Absolutely. Absolutely. Can he throw a football 70 yards? Yep, you bet. But I've watched Colin Kaepernick for a very long time. I predicted Colin Kaepernick's first start in the NFL. I predicted it ahead of time. I predicted that after, and it was to the game, that Alex Smith would get hurt, Colin Kaepernick would go in, and he would then be the 49ers quarterback from that moment forward. I predicted that. And I'm not saying it because I'm trying to take credit for it. I just did. So I was dialed into Colin Kaepernick in a very interesting kind of way. But I know what his limitations are. His limitations are he can't read a defense. His limitations are he can't throw a receiver open. His limitations are he throws one type of pass. It's fast and it's hard. When Randy Moss played for the 49ers, Colin Kaepernick threw a pass so hard it broke a finger in his hand. He has no touch. He has limitations. If the pocket breaks down, he cannot avoid the rush and look for a second or third receiver. He runs. And he's not very accurate. And he wants a lot of money. He wants starter money. So you add all these things up, and then you get the sideshow, you get the circus. So you've got a quarterback on your team who may not be, and in the NFL, you have these drop-back systems. Most of the time, there are a couple teams that do something called the read option. I don't want to get too technical, but what it does is it allows the quarterback to run more. But most teams, the quarterback drops back, looks, throws the ball. They're not saying, hey, go run. Because I guarantee you, a quarterback that runs and they get steamrolled by men who are 250 pounds and run a 40-yard dash in 4.5 seconds, you're not going to be running for very long. Trust me. So most of it is protecting their assets. He's just not good in that system. So now we have a situation in Jacksonville where there's two quarterbacks, both of whom are not very good. And now you've got the pressure being put on the Jacksonville Jaguars to go out and sign Colin Kaepernick. Well, there's another guy who's very popular right at the same time as Colin Kaepernick. He was a revolutionary quarterback with revelationary talents, and that was Robert Griffin III. Might even be a better quarterback than Colin Kaepernick. Might be a better passer than Colin Kaepernick. Nobody's knocking on his door. Why aren't GMs being strong-armed to sign Robert Griffin III? They brought him out to San Diego for a tryout, and they said, hey, it's great. And then all of a sudden they traded for Buffalo's third-string quarterback. Wasn't great enough. Tim Tebow, whom I've talked about before, is kind of the anti-Kaepernick in some. I mean, they play in a similar sort of way. They're both kind of run first, pass second quarterbacks. But they're very different in terms of why they get attention. And Tebow, I believe, was railroaded out of the league. That's my two cents. Is Kaepernick being railroaded out of the league? Yeah, sure he is. Let's be clear about it, because teams don't want to sign a distraction. They don't want to sign a distraction. They want to play football. Teams aren't in the business of civil rights. And by the way, the National Football League is one of the great melting pots in American history and American culture. It just is. It is. They have the Rooney Rule in the National Football League. They don't have the Rooney Rule anywhere else. They don't have it in baseball. When there's a manager that gets fired in baseball, there's not a rule in place that says, hey, guess what? You've got to interview a minority candidate before you can make a hire on your head coach. Baseball doesn't have that. Basketball doesn't have that, because basketball doesn't have that problem. There's plenty of people from the coaching pool to pull from. Football has the Rooney Rule. It's a bunch of bullshit, to be honest with you, because a lot of times these teams will have to bring in a quote-unquote minority candidate. And some people say, oh, it's a great opportunity for them. They get to experience the interview process and get their name out there. Whoop you fucking do. You're going into that interview, right? Let's say, you're a black coach and you're thinking, man, I'm here, I'm talking, but I know I'm here because of the Rooney Rule. And of course, if you're a GM, what are you saying? Todd, we have you in here because we really think that you're head coaching material. I mean, this Rooney Rule stuff aside, we call you in anyway. Of course they're going to say that. But that's the way football works. Tell me another sport. Tell me another sport where that happens. There isn't. There isn't. And the reason why is because, Art Rooney instituted the rule. And the rule was, hey, look, we need to integrate coaching. It's not just enough to integrate players. Let's integrate coaching. You do a personnel check around the NFL, I guarantee you'll find more black Americans in the front office of NFL teams than you will in Major League Baseball. By the way, Major League Baseball, that is going to be in the crosshairs of the culture wars. Trust me on this. Trust me. You'll find a ton of black American candidates or people, general managers, right? Assistant general managers, personnel directors. The league doesn't discriminate to that extent. If you've got talent, they'll play you. End of story. I mean, years ago, there was like a taboo around the black quarterback. Ooh, he's a black quarterback. Quarterbacks used to be white. Now he's a black quarterback. And that was, well, he can run, but can he pass? You look around the league, and you got guys that can throw the ball. And guess what? They're quarterbacks now. They don't talk about the black quarterback. Look at Dak Prescott in Dallas. They don't say, well, he's a black. No, he's a quarterback. They've removed that label. Now it's a whole other thing to find a white cornerback. That's a different story. The National Football League is one of the most integrated leagues It's one of the most integrated businesses in the country. It is not a nest of racism and white superiority. Please. And people are sniffing this stuff out now. So I don't know what's going to happen in Jacksonville. I don't know if Shad Khan, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, will sign Colin Kaepernick. And there may be a huge amount of pressure because the guys he's running out there playing quarterback are not that great. They're just not. But there's other people out. Tim Tebow was run out of the league because Tim Tebow was charismatic and he was Christian. That's what happened to Tim Tebow. People said, well, he wasn't a very good quarterback. The thing about Tim Tebow blew my mind. I had him. I had him the 1 year in Denver when he actually was something. I had him on my fantasy team. I grabbed him. And Tim Tebow was miraculous. He was miraculous. Tim Tebow got the Denver Broncos within one game of the AFC Championship. I mean the Super Bowl. They were within one game of the Super Bowl. They beat the vaunted Pittsburgh Steelers. And Tebow's stats weren't great, but he had a couple miraculous plays. He would do it all the time. Just think about that. And he's doing it again. He's playing baseball now. Now he's at the AA level. I think he's at low AA down in St. Lucie, Florida. I don't know what his stats are, but he's playing pretty well for a guy who's never played baseball. He hasn't played baseball since high school. In typical Tim Tebow fashion, before the game, he meets with a kid with severe autism. It's some, kind of major challenge and issue. And what does Tim Tebow do? He goes out and hits a home run for the kid. You see that? That is, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, wow, there is something going on here. This dude is channeling greater forces than we could ever imagine or do for or by ourselves. And I've seen him do it again and again and again. Do you think that they want him in the National Football League? Do you think that they want a charismatic, white male Christian who is able to perform feats of magic based mostly on his faith? They don't want that guy anywhere near their product as much as they don't want Colin Kaepernick. And Kaepernick may be signed. I hope he is. I hope Colin Kaepernick signs. I hope he gets a chance to play. I hope he gets to show the world whether or not he's actually a decent quarterback. Because if he sucks, then we just put an end to this whole thing. And people can walk away and put their hands in their pockets, and turn their shoulder and say, well, he wasn't really that good. But you know what, though? He played. We got them to get him to play. And I said this, when this is all happening, he was Colin Kaepernick is going to be the Rosa Parks of sports. And sure enough, the other day, somebody comes out and says he's the Rosa Parks of sports. You're going to have all these guys on their knees. Who cares? Get on your knee. Get on your knee. Get on two knees. Who cares? Turn your back to the crowd. I don't give a shit. And guess what? Most of America is not going to give a shit anyway. The shock value is over. People, begin to have a really thick skin. And the ones who it really bugs are just going to tune out. They're going to tune out. What if these guys were really, really, really serious about their protest? You know what they do? They wouldn't play. They wouldn't play. They'd get together and they say, let's shut this motherfucker down. Let's shut this league down. Because that might be the next level. If the knees don't work anymore, they'll be stroking their beards going, what do we do now? The shock value of this has seemed to wear off. What if we don't play? But they won't do that, though. You know why? They like the money. If they don't play, they don't get paid. And they got things to take care of, business to take care of, families to take care of, houses to take care of, cars to take care of,
families upon families to take care of. So they're not going to sacrifice their pay, because that would be the ultimate test, wouldn't it? So let's road test this. Don't play. Check it out. See how that works. It could happen, but I don't think it's going to. Not going to happen. Ain't going to happen. Ah, what a wonderful, wonderful world, isn't it? Q Debo. What a wonderful world we live in. You know what would happen if the customers decided, guess what? We're kind of over this. We're not watching your games. We're not watching the TV. We're not going to go to your games. We're not going to go to your games. So you can all just play in front of everybody else, and all of a sudden the owners get really freaked out. Really freaked out. And they've got personal season licenses. So a lot of these tickets are sold ahead of time. But they don't like images of empty stadiums, trust me. Now all of a sudden the owners would get real proactive and say, yep, you got to change this collective bargaining agreement about this stand for the national anthem thing, because that's what they have in the NBA. The NBA, once David Stern saw what Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf was doing, the next time the collective bargaining agreement came around, he said, we'll agree to this, but they got to stand for the national anthem. That's in the agreement of the NBA. So that's why guys in the NBA weren't sitting down or taking a knee, because they have to stand. They have to stand. They don't, they get fined, and big time, and it's a violation of the collective bargaining agreement. Ah, yes, what a wonderful world we live in. It's beautiful. So let's recap today's show, shall we? As we head off into this wonderful weekend. I'll stress it again and again and again. Take care of the vehicle. Get that body right. Clean it up. Really, I think, I was talking with Emily Moyer the other day from Randy's show and Off Planet Radio, and we're gonna talk about this. I'm gonna have her on the show. I think we're gonna talk about Candida and how Candida is an infestation that has colonized us and that is essentially controlling us. We're going to talk about that. So the first stage of taking care of Candida is getting your diet right. Get rid of the sugars. Get rid of the big fat heavy grains, the big fat heavy carbs. I'm not a proponent of veganism or vegetarianism, but if that floats your boat, you do that. But if you get rid of those legumes, get rid of those lectins, and then take care of your body, clean it up. And then you become of sound mind and body, right? And then all of a sudden, reality becomes a very interesting place. All right, let's get on out of here. You know the drill. Use your head to discern what's real, your heart to stay open to what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend.